It is parent-teacher conference season. We went back to school in mid-August, and now it is getting close to the end of the first quarter, which is usually when our conferences are. I thought this would be a great time to talk about parent-teacher communication in high school. So my perspective, like a lot of people who start teaching right out of college at 22, 23 years old, has really shifted. So first, when you first come out of college, you can relate more to the students than to the parents a lot of times. And that perspective can work to your advantage. I remember I had AP classes for the first time at 23 years old, and I could talk to parents more from that perspective of, I remember what it's like to take AP classes not that long ago, and the college admission process and all of that as it stands today, because I just went through it. So don't feel that if you're young and you don't have children that you won't be able to relate to parents. If this is your first time doing conferences, I remember how nerve-wracking that was, but hopefully you find this to be useful. If you've had conferences for many years, you can probably leave us even more wisdom in the comments. Please do, with your best tips. But these are just some things I think you should keep in mind when it comes to communicating with parents in high school. So one thing that I am realizing on the parent side of things, my child is just starting like preschool. There's only one teacher or two teachers that I stay in contact with. So we can have pretty regular discussions. But I'm imagining our students, my ninth graders this year, they have 7 teachers during the course of the day. And that's a lot more for their parents to keep up with. And obviously the responsibility should be more on them to take care of their day-to-day needs in their classes. But if they are a student that has particular challenges that span multiple classes, say they have ADHD or some sort of organizational challenge or medical issue even, that can be a lot for parents to take on, because every teacher has different policies and procedures and systems, and that's a lot. So be mindful of that first and foremost, that you are not the kid's only teacher. I probably don't have to tell you that, but just reminding yourself of that going into the conversation might give you a little bit of grace if you're like, they should know the system and this has been clear from day one. Yeah, but that's only a seventh of that kid's day if they're in a traditional schedule. All right, and then going along with that, parents have a flood of information coming at them from their child's school, especially if they're getting like guardian emails on Google Classroom, or they are getting the constant reminders from the school office, but they're also getting calendar notifications and things connected to whatever their school kids' LMS is, or teacher gradebook notifications, things like that, if they have those turned on. So the problem with getting so much information is that sometimes you miss the important stuff. So be mindful of that just because you're updating the gradebook doesn't mean that parents are always seeing that you put in something is missing, or that something was a really low test grade for the last couple of tests. So it's worth it if you are noticing those patterns to maybe just send an email home. A lot of the teacher gradebook software, like the one I use is Teacheries, there's a little email option on every assignment to just send a form email home. And even that might just push through the noise and alert a parent that like, hey, your kid is missing a big grade, or that sort of thing. All right. The other one is if you have a student that's struggling with behavior challenges in class, whatever that means, chances are that it's not unique to your class. It has not been unique to this year, especially in high school. And parents oftentimes are only hearing from the school when their kid has done something wrong. So be aware that early in the year really is the best time to make good connections with your families. And if you have students that present repeated challenges in your class, it's even more important that you make those good connections early on. So every kid does something good at some point in time, and just acknowledging it goes a long way, even if it's just improvement from the previous week. I'll give you an example. A student that really struggled with getting assignments turned in on time the first few weeks of school. I think I emailed home like once or twice about that, but the next week of school, it was a lot better. There was only one thing that was in late. So I just sent a note home that said, hey, I noticed that this student has done a really good job of staying on top of his work this week. I don't know if you've been helping him or he's made good changes, but I really appreciate that. And I got like paragraphs back in an email of how much that parent appreciated just that, noticing it, just noticing that their kid was doing something right. And so if other issues do come up, we have that relationship that the parent knows that I'm not just seeing what's wrong about their student or what their student does wrong. I'm looking for the good too, and that just builds that ethos that goes a long way. So that's, I think, one of the most important things that I learned from my mentors when I was a new teacher is the communication has to be frequent, and you've got to catch that positive stuff early on to just set a baseline of contact. Because if the first thing you're saying to a parent has to be a discussion of something disciplinary or a really bad grade or behavior, it's awkward, and it doesn't have to be. Just make something positive happen first. Also, keep in mind that their teenager likely tells them nothing at all about the content of their classes. Or if they do, it's something to the effect of a defense of their grades about how the teacher picks on them or that sort of stuff. So you might remember this from you were a teenager yourself. Parent asks you, "How was your day?" "Fine." They don't get a lot. And I want to make 2 points about that. One is that you just genuinely might need to fill them in on what's going on in your classroom and what kinds of stuff you're working on and the student's progress. But also, parents really appreciate knowing anything about their child's social life whatsoever. And I am realizing this especially as a parent when she was just too young to communicate yet. Now she talks nonstop, but when she was too young to communicate about her day, our daycare center would just send us a picture of her playing with shaving cream or her playing dolls with another kid, or just let us know of she was a good helper today. She helped pick up the blocks. And it was oh yes, this is a thing I can talk about with my kid at dinner tonight. This is just something I can praise her for. And I know that obviously our relationship is going to change as she gets older and she becomes more independent and communicative. But I feel at some point that never goes away for parents, right? If you're a parent of an older child, that doesn't go away, does it? You always want to know something about your child's life that they're not maybe able to share with you, or just at an age where they're not sharing it with you. Here are some ways that I've been able to do that. First of all, I mentioned before in my classroom, I keep a photo board. I take a lot of pictures in my classroom of just the fun things that we do. Sometimes if I have kids, I have a photo in my room right now that I just love. Wish I could show it to you, but it's my students, so I can't. I'm just some of my boys all sprawled out in the corner, just deeply reading their IR books. And they're 9th graders now. I'm going to have them again for multiple years. And I know that they're going to looking back on that. And I can imagine being a parent and seeing me oh my gosh, that's my kid reading. I didn't know they were reading this book right now. So pictures is a great way to connect. But also, if they give you any kind of really reflective or personal writing, if you can save that in some way and share it at the conference. And look, I know some of my 9th, 10th graders would probably be super mad if they knew that I showed their mom a nice thing that they wrote. But I will tell you, I have had moms literally cry during conferences. I do this assignment. This is AP Language and Composition Unit 5, the memoir unit, where they do this photo essay where they take a photo that's important to them and then they write about why it's important, but it's usually a discussion of family or friends or the person they're becoming, that sort of thing. Stuff that all parents want to know about their teenagers, but teenagers are often reluctant to share. Now, I will say that I had a kid actually print out his essay and put it in a frame for his mom for Christmas one year, but most kids are not that willing to share. So especially for my super zipped up boys, sometimes I save those and I give them to the parents at conferences. Okay, I just want you to know that I thought this was a really touching piece and I thought you might like to read it, but don't tell them I gave it to you. And oh my gosh, that means so much to them. I had a parent, I gave that to them their junior year, and then after graduation, she saw me and she thanked me for that again. So, if you can keep any small piece of creative writing, reflective writing, that obviously not something where they're bad mouthing their family, but something that's positive, I think they really appreciate that too. And then also just remember that it is extraordinarily difficult to be a parent in the United States right now. I probably don't have to tell you of just all of the challenges, not only the economic situation in the US, but just the social pressures that a lot of people in communities face to have their kids involved in a bunch of different things, or they think that's the only way to get them into a successful future or to give them a better life experience than they had. And our kids are overscheduled, which means that our parents are overscheduled, and a lot of them are overworked and stressed to the nines and dealing with multiple children's schedule beyond just the one that you have. And they are doing their best. We hope that their kids are doing their best too, but the parents are often doing their best. And give them a little grace, give them a little praise if their kid is doing really well. I just use the phrase like, hey, thank you for sending such a nice human to school. I really appreciate that. Your kid says please and thank you, and that goes a long way. And I think they need to hear it. Just being willing to communicate early and often and share the positive things, so when the negative things inevitably do come up, we feel more like partners to address those. And that's bought me a lot of goodwill with families. And then if you're in a district for a while and you have the siblings come up and you're like, all right, yeah, I remember you. And it builds a positive reputation for yourself as a teacher. And it builds, I think, a stronger school community where the parents can trust their kids' teachers. If you feel like parent contact is a really combative area for you, or you have just some real nerves about what to say to parents or how to talk to them. And again, I remember feeling that way when I was a young teacher, especially. I hope this gives you some ideas and just gives you a little bit of courage to put yourself out there and just say something really positive at conferences, or start sending out those emails now if you don't have them or the conferences are coming up. A little strategy I do is I try to send 2 or 3 positive emails every Friday. Ending a day on gratitude before the weekend is, first of all, just good for the soul, but it also just kind of helps you make sure you're going through and making contact with as many kids as possible throughout the early part of the year. All right, that's it for today's coffee chat, and I have a plan to get some more of the 180 days of Lang videos for Unit 3 rolling. I have a guest lined up for a video. As soon as we can make that happen, watch for that as well. And then I have an exciting new class of resources that I'm getting ready to share that I'm going to be talking about probably in the next one as well. So stay tuned for that and have a great rest of your day.